Fox News recently reported that a caravan of 15,000 asylum-seeking immigrants are headed towards the southern border of the United States. It's because of that fact that it's more important than ever that we learn to communicate as two different cultures. Today, I'd like to talk about an interview that I gave with a member of the Hispanic culture to see what kind of information I could glean from that. I'm also going to cover some of the cultural differences between Latinos and Americans, to kind of give you a little bit of a background on why we communicate differently. And finally, I'm going to talk about some of the ways that we can learn to communicate better with the Hispanic culture as Americans. There's 7.53 billion people in the world, speaking 7,097 languages according to SIL International. And every culture communicates differently. Latinos communicate very differently from Americans, obviously. And to better understand those differences, I decided to interview my mother, who was born and raised in Mexico City. I asked her, how do Latinos communicate? And she said, Latinos aren't usually convinced by somebody who stands up in front of them and gives a speech, or somebody who records a speech and televises it. They usually feel like they're trying to convince you of something, is what my mother said. And this really illustrates their distrust for authority, and that kind of permeates their culture a lot. Besides the distrust for authority, my mother, said something that really struck a chord. She said, I'd be more likely to trust my neighbor or a close friend than I would somebody giving a speech on TV. And that was huge. I mean, that for us is very counterintuitive. We usually will listen to somebody who's giving a speech or somebody who's on TV, and they're very likely to not do so. And so that's very different between our cultures. The CDC reports that the collectivist values or group orientation permeates Hispanic life, and individuals often look to one another for opinions. This group mentality is really important to understand because the way that they learn things, the way that they understand things is by talking to friends, by talking to family, it's really just one-on-one interaction, oftentimes Facebook and that type of thing, but it's not going to be from the top down, schools, teachers, politicians, that type of thing. So because of this, obviously it's, I asked my mother, what is a good way to learn, what would be a better way to learn to communicate with Hispanics? And she said, it's really got to be a multi-level approach. It's got to be word of mouth. It's got to be meeting people face to face. It's also probably a combination of doing speeches, getting the word out through media, social media, and that type of thing. But it really has to be an approach from all angles so that it can permeate the culture and they can really start to talk about it. So yeah, it really just to communicate as two different cultures, we just need to learn that everything's going to take more time. We need to be more patient for things to kind of percolate and permeate into their culture. And so that with that, I'm just going to leave you with the simple message that we just need to learn to have patience when communicating with people of other cultures. Thank you.